don't take Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland, and I am not going to let that happen.
Is there any deal they can offer you? Either like
Yeah, sure. I'd love to make a deal with them. It's easier. But one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland.
Something is breaking inside the Republican Party right now. And I'm not talking about the usual Washington drama or the cable news theatrics you're used to seeing. I'm talking about actual panic, the kind of fear that happens when people in power realize they've completely lost control of the situation. Over the last 72 hours, Republican insiders have been making calls, emergency calls, the kind you make at 2 in the morning when you know something catastrophic is about to hit. These aren't low-level staffers or fringe voices. These are the people who run campaigns, who move money, who decide which candidates live and which ones die politically. And right now, they're watching something they never thought they'd see. Their own party eating itself alive while the man at the top plays a game that nobody in Washington can understand anymore. Here's what they're seeing. Election forecasters don't normally do what they just did. These are careful people, conservative people. They build their reputations on being right, on moving slowly, on waiting until the data is absolutely certain before they make a call. But something happened recently that made them throw caution out the window, something that made them look at the map and realize the ground had shifted underneath everyone's feet. They saw a collapse happening in real time. And when these forecasters move, when they actually change their predictions in the middle of a cycle, it means the money people already know. It means the internal polling is worse than what you're seeing on television. It means the people who bet their careers on being right have seen something that scared them enough to act. The number they're looking at is massive. We're talking about a shift so large that it doesn't just change who controls Congress. It changes the entire calculation of what's possible in American politics for the next decade.
Because you're fighting the Democrats and you're fighting the fake news. And it's amazing that they can be so stupid. And they don't have credibility anymore, and you can beat them. I mean, it's the old thing that, never fight the news, but you have no choice because it's almost like they become radicalized. But you are fighting the news, but you can beat them. That's why I'm standing here. I mean, I had Kamala. I was beating Joe by 30 points. And then they changed him. That's like a fighter in the ring. He's losing. And they say, let's put somebody else in to take his place. Very unfair. They changed in the middle of the election.
But before we get to that number, you need to understand what's happening behind it, because the number is just a symptom. The disease is something far more dangerous. There's a moment happening right now inside the Republican Party that most people aren't seeing. It's not on camera. It's not in press conferences. It's happening in private conversations, in phone calls between members of Congress who have been loyal soldiers for years. And in these conversations, a line is being drawn, a red line, the kind that once crossed changes everything. One of these conversations just became public. A Republican congressman, someone who has voted with his party on virtually everything, someone who has defended the administration through scandal after scandal, just said something that nobody expected to hear. He didn't hint at it. He didn't use careful political language. He said it directly, clearly, in a way that can't be walked back. He said that if certain actions are taken, if certain threats become reality, his party will do something they've never done before to one of their own. Impeachment, not from Democrats, from Republicans. The word came out of his mouth like a bomb, and the silence that followed told you everything you need to know about where the party's head is right now. Because when a Republican congressman is willing to say that word out loud, when he's willing to threaten his own president with the ultimate political weapon, it means the foundation has cracked. It means the fear of what comes next is greater than the fear of breaking ranks. But what could possibly push a loyal Republican to that point? What line could be so severe that it would cause a member of Congress to publicly threaten impeachment against his own party's leader? The answer is stranger than you think, and it reveals just how disconnected from reality the current administration has become. It started with Greenland. I know what you're thinking. Greenland sounds like a joke. It sounds like something from a satirical sketch or a late-night comedy bit. But inside the halls of power, Greenland has become something else entirely. It's become a symbol, a breaking point. The moment when Republicans looked at their leader and realized he wasn't just pushing boundaries anymore. He was operating in a completely different reality, and that reality was about to drag all of them over a cliff. The threats weren't subtle. They weren't vague political posturing. They were direct, aggressive, and aimed at a country that has been America's ally since World War II. Denmark, a NATO member, a nation that sent its sons and daughters to fight alongside American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, a country that has never wavered in its commitment to the alliance. And now the President of the United States was openly discussing taking their territory by force, bullying them, threatening them, treating a 75-year alliance like it was some kind of real estate negotiation gone wrong. This is where the Republican congressman drew his line. He called it what it was: immoral, wrong, a betrayal of everything America is supposed to stand for. But he didn't stop there. He went further. He said that if the president actually follows through, if he actually tries to invade a NATO ally, it would constitute a high crime and misdemeanor, a direct violation of the NATO agreement. And he said that most Republicans know this. They know it's wrong. They know it's insane. And if it happens, even a Republican-controlled House would have no choice but to move toward impeachment. Think about that for a second. A Republican congressman just told the Republican president that his own party will remove him from office if he crosses this line. That's not politics as usual. That's not partisan bickering. That's a complete breakdown of party unity. That's what happens when the people in power realize the person leading them has lost the thread entirely. But here's the thing. Greenland isn't really about Greenland. It's about what it represents. It's about a pattern of behavior that has Republican strategists pulling their hair out because they know what's coming. They know that while their leader is playing emperor on the world stage, while he's making threats against allies and talking about invasions like he's playing Risk, the American people are dealing with something completely different, something real, something that affects their lives every single day. Let me take you inside a grocery store in Illinois, not a fancy one. Just a regular suburban supermarket where families do their weekly shopping. The woman standing in the cereal aisle is holding 2 boxes. She's doing math in her head. The same cereal her kids have eaten for years now costs almost double what it did 3 years ago. She puts 1 box back. Across town, a couple is sitting at their kitchen table with a letter from their insurance company. Their healthcare premiums are going up again, not by a little, by an amount that means they have to make a choice. Do they cut back on groceries? Do they cancel the family vacation they've been planning? Do they pull their kid out of the after-school program? These are the conversations happening in millions of homes across America right now. This is the lived reality of working families. And while they're making these impossible choices, while they're watching their purchasing power evaporate, the president is on television calling himself the tariff king. He's saying the economy is experiencing a miracle. He's talking about amazing data and hot numbers, like he's reading a stock ticker instead of looking at what's happening to actual human beings. This is the disconnect that's killing the Republican Party right now. This is why those election forecasters made their move. Because when you have a president calling himself a king while families are struggling to afford basic necessities, when you have a leader bragging about economic miracles while people are getting letters telling them their health care is about to become unaffordable, that's not just bad politics. That's political suicide. And the numbers prove it. Inflation is sitting at 2.7% year over year. Now, the administration will tell you that's not bad. They'll point to charts and graphs and try to convince you that everything is fine. But here's what they won't tell you. That number would probably be back down to 2% if the administration had simply done nothing. If they had just maintained the policies that were working, if they had extended the tax credits that were helping working families afford health care, we'd be in a better place. Instead, those credits expired, and now families are experiencing what one congressman called a hellacious reality. The administration failed to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Let that sink in. While the president was busy playing tariff king, while he was threatening to invade Greenland, millions of American families lost the subsidies that made their health insurance affordable, and now they're drowning. Not in some abstract political debate, but in actual bills they can't pay, in choices they shouldn't have to make, in a system that's supposed to help them, but is instead pushing them underwater. This is why the Cook Political Report just moved 18 House seats toward Democrats. 18. That's not a normal shift. That's not a minor adjustment based on new polling. That's a tectonic movement. That's what happens when the gap between what a leader says and what people are experiencing becomes so wide that voters can't ignore it anymore. The Republican strategists know this. They've seen the internal numbers. They know that in district after district, voters are asking the same question. Why is Washington talking about invading Greenland when I can't afford to feed my family? Why is the president calling himself a king when my health insurance just became unaffordable? Why are we focused on foreign adventures when the American dream is slipping away? And it's not just Greenland. The foreign policy chaos goes deeper. It reveals a pattern that's even more dangerous than the individual incidents. It reveals an administration that makes promises it has no intention of keeping, that talks tough but acts weak, that tells people around the world that America has their back and then watches silently as they're slaughtered. The president went on television and spoke directly to Iranian protesters, people who were risking their lives to stand up against one of the most brutal regimes in the world. He told them he had their back. He said it clearly, forcefully. He threatened the Iranian government, said there would be consequences, said America would come in guns blazing if the regime killed anyone. Those were his words, guns blazing. The protesters believed him. Why wouldn't they? He's the president of the United States. When America makes a promise like that, it's supposed to mean something. So they continued their protests. They continued to fight. And the regime did exactly what everyone knew they would do. They killed them. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They murdered thousands of people who had been told that America would protect them. And what did the president do? Nothing. Worse than nothing. He shifted his tone completely. Suddenly he was talking about respecting the Iranian regime for not hanging even more people. Respecting them. After they had just massacred thousands of protesters who believed American promises. After they had called his bluff and realized his words meant absolutely nothing. Do you understand what that does to American credibility? When the President of the United States tells people he has their back, and then thousands of them are murdered while he watches, what message does that send to the rest of the world? It tells every ally, every partner, every person who might consider trusting America that our words are empty, that our promises are just noise. That when things get real, when blood is actually spilled, America will find a reason to look the other way. The same pattern is playing out with Venezuela. The administration has been making noise about Venezuelan oil, about American interests, about the need to act. There's even talk of military intervention, of occupying the country, of allowing oil companies to go in and extract resources. That's why Representative Krishnamurthy introduced the NOVA Act, the No Occupation of Venezuela Act. It's designed to do one simple thing: block taxpayer funds from being used to occupy Venezuela or allow oil companies to exploit its resources. Think about why that legislation is even necessary. Think about what it means that a congressman felt he had to introduce a bill to prevent the United States from invading and occupying a sovereign nation so that private companies could profit from its oil. This is the foreign policy landscape right now. Threats without follow-through, promises without action, words that mean nothing, backed by force that never materializes. And all of it is happening while American families are struggling with problems that actually affect their daily lives. Because here's the brutal truth that Republican strategists are confronting right now. Voters don't care about Greenland. They don't care about Venezuelan oil. They don't care about the president's tough talk with Iran. What they care about is whether they can afford to live. What they care about is whether the American dream still exists for them and their children. And right now, the answer they're getting is no. Representative Krishnamurthy understands this in a way that most politicians don't, because he lived it. When his family came to America from India, they had nothing. They relied on public housing. They used food stamps to survive. They were saved by the very programs that the current administration is now trying to gut. The American dream isn't an abstract concept to him. It's the reason his family survived. It's the reason he's now serving in Congress. And he's watching that dream come under what he calls a mortal assault. That's the phrase he used. Mortal assault. Not a challenge, not a setback. An assault. Something designed to kill. And what's doing the killing? A president who's more focused on calling himself the tariff king than on helping working families. An administration that's more interested in foreign fantasies than domestic realities. A party that's watching its electoral prospects collapse because its leader has completely lost touch with what matters to actual voters. And the evidence of that collapse is everywhere. 15 Republicans in the House just joined Democrats to extend tax credits. 15. These are members who have voted with their party on virtually everything. But when it came to helping families afford health care, when it came to choosing between party loyalty and the people they represent, they broke ranks. They looked at their districts and realized that if they didn't act, if they let those credits expire, they'd be facing an electoral bloodbath. This is what internal fracturing looks like. This is what happens when a party's leader is so disconnected from reality that even his most loyal supporters have to choose between following him and political survival, and more of them are choosing survival. The 18-seat shift isn't just a number. It's a forecast of what's coming. It's a prediction based on what Republican strategists are seeing in their own polling. In district after district, voters who supported Republicans 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago are now telling pollsters they're ready to vote Democrat. Not because they've suddenly become liberals, not because they've embraced some progressive ideology, but because they're angry, they're frustrated. They feel abandoned by a party that's supposed to represent them, but is instead following a leader into complete chaos. These are suburban voters, small business owners, people who go to church on Sunday and work hard Monday through Friday, people who believe in personal responsibility and limited government, traditional Republican voters, and they're leaving, not all at once, not in some dramatic exodus, but slowly, steadily, in numbers large enough to flip 18 House seats from competitive to leaning Democrat. That's the nightmare. That's what has Republican leaders panicking. Because once you lose these voters, once you break that trust, it takes a generation to get them back. And the way things are going, the party isn't just losing them for one cycle, it's losing them for good. The midterms are coming, the landscape is shifting, and the Republican Party is watching everything they built over the last decade crumble. Because their leader would rather play emperor than govern, would rather threaten allies than help families, would rather call himself a king than acknowledge the reality of what's happening to working Americans. This isn't about Democrats winning. This is about Republicans losing. There's a difference. When you win, it's because you convince people to support your vision. When you lose, it's because you gave people no choice but to walk away. And right now, the Republican Party is in full-scale retreat. Not because Democrats have some brilliant strategy, but because their own leader has made it impossible for loyal voters to justify supporting them anymore. The question isn't whether Democrats will take back the House. The question is whether the Republican Party can survive what's coming after. Because when your own congressman is threatening impeachment, when 15 of your members are breaking ranks on key votes, when the forecasters are moving 18 seats against you in the middle of a cycle, you're not just losing an election, you're watching your coalition dissolve in real time. And the truly terrifying thing for Republican strategists is that there's no clear path back. Because the problem isn't policy, it's not messaging, it's not campaign strategy. The problem is the man at the top, and he's not changing. He's doubling down. He's getting more erratic, more disconnected, more focused on personal grievances and foreign fantasies than on the bread and butter issues that actually win elections. So while families in Illinois are doing math in the grocery store aisle, while couples are making impossible choices at their kitchen tables, while the American dream slips further out of reach for millions of people, the president is threatening to invade Greenland and calling himself the tariff king. And Republican strategists are watching their electoral map turn blue, district by district, voter by voter, knowing there's nothing they can do to stop it as long as he's in charge. This is the choice voters are facing. This is the reality that's driving those 18 seats toward Democrats. This is why a Republican congressman just threatened his own president with impeachment. Because at some point, even the most loyal soldiers realize the ship is sinking. And when that happens, when the people who are supposed to defend you start looking for lifeboats, you know the end is coming. The only question left is how much damage gets done before it's over. How many more allies get threatened? How many more families fall through the cracks? How many more promises get broken? How many more seats flip before the Republican Party realizes that following this path leads to complete electoral annihilation? Right now, they're getting their answer. 18 seats and counting. And the number keeps growing because the pattern keeps repeating. Every time the president chooses spectacle over substance, every time he picks a fight with an ally instead of helping a struggling family, every time he plays king while his own voters are drowning, another district slips away. Another reliable Republican voter decides they've had enough. Another longtime supporter looks at their kitchen table, looks at their bills, looks at their kids, and realizes that loyalty to a party means nothing if that party has abandoned them. The forecasters are still watching, still analyzing, still waiting to see if the collapse accelerates or if somehow, some way, the party finds a way to stop the bleeding. But based on everything that's happening, based on the threats and the chaos and the complete disconnect between what the leader is focused on and what voters actually care about, the smart money is betting on more pain, not less. Because here's what the Republican establishment is finally understanding. You can't win elections by telling people the economy is a miracle when they're struggling to afford groceries. You can't maintain power by threatening to invade allies when your own citizens need help. You can't keep voters loyal when your leader acts like a king instead of a public servant. And you can't survive when your own members of Congress are publicly discussing whether to impeach you. This is the nightmare. Not the loss of 18 seats, not the midterm defeat that's coming. The nightmare is what comes after. Because once a party fractures like this, once the voters who built your coalition walk away, once your own elected officials start breaking ranks, you don't just lose an election, you lose a generation. And right now, watching the Republican Party tear itself apart while its leader plays emperor, that's exactly what's at stake. Not just the next 2 years, the next 20,